Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about All of Us Are Dead, Episode 2. Full spoilers for the episode. Yeah, I had fun with Episode 1. I'm back for Episode 2, and credit to the show, it didn't feel like it slowed down or anything. Despite the fact that this episode is over an hour long, and we have 10 more, it never really felt like it was, oh, we have to slow the pacing down now because we have to keep this going for a silly number of episodes. The start of the episode in particular, like the chaos of the cafeteria and just how long it kept one continuous shot going as we were darting around various characters, various zombies running around. I can't imagine the headache it took to choreograph filming that sequence, but really fun stuff. And it was actually Chung-san who jumps in and helps Onjo, which was really nice. They have a lot of good moments in this episode, which I'll get into. I think the first thing I would say, though, outside of just some of the great action sequences, which this episode is kind of, it has multiple of them. Like, we have the big one, the cafeteria at the start, with the camera darting around and various characters ducking and diving into and under tables, zombies running into things again, all that stuff. It kind of continues when they get outside, and we get, like, the truck hitting a zombie and the climbing and all the other stuff. But we also, I think this also done a good job of having distinct, memorable moments with distinct zombies. The two that spring to mind in this episode are Cone Zombie, which is the guy at the start they're doing some stupid game where he's got his leg in a traffic cone that he's like got upside down and he's put his leg in it. And he turns into a zombie, so then he's like hobbling around as a zombie with this cone on his leg. So it's very distinct because when you see him sort of like, almost like it's a peg leg sort of limping into the scene, you kind of like, oh, I know who this guy is. Visual signifiers like that are really smart and make it really easy to follow a show with this many characters, because it's a school, there's hundreds of just fodder characters thrown around. So anything you can do to make some of them memorable is really smart. The other zombie that really stuck out, it's a new character, it's the girl from the first episode, but I thought her scenes at the hospital where they try to give her an MRI and she bends all the way back, effectively, I assume, completely ruining her spinal column. So she is crawling down the hospital corridors, which is not necessarily a unique thing. We've seen zombies crawling before. I mean, it's one of the staples of the Resident Evil series is that those crawling zombies every so often. But what really stuck out to me about this is the way she moved. It was almost like she was swimming on a floor because she was just kind of like sliding her legs across. It looked more fluid and a really kind of... I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't quite as shuffly as typically you would expect. This was more of a dragging her feet in a perfect slide. It stuck out in my mind anyway, and I was like, oh, I'm going to remember that scene. So there's it's peppering in moments like that, but then just the general big action sequences. The cafeteria, the secondary bully, the one with the white shirt, he like ends up in the kitchen, hiding under a table, where he is kind of there for a lot of the episode. We cut back to him a couple of times, but not much. We stick with our main characters, our main pair in their group, which does have a little ensemble now. Sort of the rich girl who is constantly whining and wants help. A couple other characters. I don't really have necessarily descriptions for all these characters yet, but they are in this group, and there's some fun stuff because this, there's a good, like, the cafeteria to the outside to back in the inside and then getting around the hallways. There's a good couple of moments where Onjo and Chung-san both save each other. She saves him with the fire extinguisher. He obviously started the episode with like jumping in and saving her in the cafeteria. So there's kind of this like mutual dependency that neither one of them are kind of acknowledging, which kind of makes the potential, admission of a relationship kind of sweet. But they end up barricading themselves inside a classroom, and that's where we finally get to breathe for just a little bit in the episode, because it is like a solid 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of just chaos up until that point. But once they get into the classroom, and they have a moment to calm down. They do play with the main pair in that, you know, the friend of Onjo kind of acknowledges, hey, I think your best friend dude is into you, and she's like, oh, he doesn't feel those things. I mean, I think that's later in the episode, but you know, the point remaining that there's just, it has been brought up a little bit more and more. Later on, when Onjo's friend turns because she's been bitten, she is distraught by this. She has all these like emotional little flashbacks as she doesn't want to kill her. And this is probably the biggest save moment of the episode, where Chung San sort of leaps in like to protect her, because Onjo doesn't want to fight her, and he leaps in to protect her. And it's another, again, it's a lot of showing and not telling, which is really nice. So when there is dialogue that follows up where they're talking about like things, it never feels like it's having to explain things to us. It just kind of solidifies what we're already seeing in their actions, and that's really nice. So yeah, it's pretty well told in that sense, which is good stuff. The first class, because they're in two classrooms this episode. They're in the classroom at first, which ultimately they have to leave because a teacher runs in, but he's been bitten, and they have to kind of like ultimately fight him off. And the teacher starts like swearing at them and everything when they ask him to leave. He you know, causes chaos. They have to run. They end up running up to the lab. There's some fun stuff that I'll get to there. What's one point on this scene though, is that I really like the idea that they had actually effectively kind of protected themselves, but it was an adult who put them in danger again. It was an adult looking out for themselves who endangered the younger generation. I don't know if there's like if there's an intentional symbolism there with that, or I'm just reading too much into it, but it did kind of pop into my head as I was watching the scene. Yeah, but all the stuff with them going up was great, because they end up using like a door. Like the sort of the bigger guy, he like grabs a door, and he's got a great big slow motion moment where he runs and kind of uses it, you know, horizontally to sort of form a barricade so they can sort of push the. And obviously this wouldn't work with a huge horde of zombies, but there's, I don't know, like 8 of them, so it's low enough that they can push them back, and they're using like window panels as well, just anything to sort of create barriers between them and the zombies. And one of the fun things about a zombie story when it's done well, much like a disaster movie in a lot of ways, is it's all about the survival. It's all about the problem solving. It's about, okay, these are the rules, these are the things we have to deal with and abide by. What resources do we have? What rooms and equipment can we have access to? Where can we get to? Who can we call? What can we do? You know, and they do find the phone. They're able to call the police. There's a little joke there because they're like, we need the passcode, and then eventually Onjo's like, you don't need the passcode to phone the emergency services, which is, you know, pretty constant. I actually really like that scene as well, just because it's obviously the guy's like, zombies, yeah, like he's not believing them like on the other end of the phone, but immediately we get to see that no, there is a zombie outbreak. They're getting more reports of people being bitten. It's happening at the hospital. They're sending out emergency services. Onjo's dad, who I said he was an ambulance driver last episode, because he was. The impression I got in this episode. Now, anyone who knows anything about Korea could like let me know this, but it seems like ambulance first responders are part of the fire department in South Korea. That's what I got from this episode, because he was still very clearly driving an ambulance of sorts, and that's what he effectively did last episode. So it seems like they're rolled into the fire department, which, you know, fair enough, I guess. It's not that weird, but I certainly have never seen it before, and it confused me for a minute when she said my dad worked. I thought she was lying, and then we see him like getting into the. I was like, oh yeah, but it's the same van. So yeah, the people, let me know. I actually, do you know, this is a little interesting thing that I thought was neat, is that they got to they reference Train to Busan, which, you know, it can be a little cringy when zombie movies or shows reference other zombie movies. You know, it's like, it's a Walking Dead, or it's like a Dawn of the Dead, or whatever. I did tell you, I did actually kind of like this reference just because it was neat that it was like Korea's own film they referenced, because Korea made a great zombie movie, maybe the best zombie movie of the last 20-30 years. So it was kind of neat that they got to reference their own country's film. So I don't know, I kind of like that. That was neat. I mean, it's all about context. iZombie used to do a great job of referencing things. Like the zombies in that were obviously smarter if they were still eating brains, but if they were starved, they turned into like a classical slow-moving zombie, and they referred to those zombies as Romero's because he directed the original Dead films, and that was a sort of good example of a cultural zombie reference. But your taste on that may vary a little bit. Yeah, so no, all the barricading, all this, using the fire hose to first of all break into the science lab, and then using the mannequin arm to try and get the fire hose back, to then use it as a rope system to get down to a different class, because at this point there's too many zombies appearing at the window. Ultimately, Onjo's friend turning into a zombie kind of like just causes more chaos. And yeah, just little details like, at first, because it's actually Sanchung's idea to lower the hose, right, and climb out the window, and he's going to go first, but he then decides that he's not going to. He asks someone else to, and it's because at this point Onjo is just this like, not catatonic, but she's just really emotional. She's sitting there, she's not talking to anyone, she's inconsolable, and he doesn't want to leave her. He wants to make sure she gets out, so he's kind of waiting till last so that he can make sure she goes. So we get this big dramatic ending where he's lowering her down, and then the zombies break into the classroom finally, because this whole time, for them to use this fire hose, it's still attached to the wall in the hallway, so the door is slightly open so they can use it. So the zombies break in, and the big dramatic ending of the episode is that it looks like Chung-san dies. Like he kind of does like a flip out the window as the zombies come at him. I don't think he actually is dead. I feel like we're going to somehow have him survive the start of the next episode. There's a few theories he could land on something. It may have something to do with our other main character, Soo-hyuk, who... He, of course, is with them in the first classroom, but he doesn't make it to the science lab. He gets he gets surrounded by zombies on the way up. He ends up in an art class, and just towards the end of the episode, he actually ends up outside the window because the zombies are coming after him, and he's just sort of like clinging on. Now, it's possible that he's somehow going to like help save Chung-san, but the problem with that is that he's got like very little. It's not like there's a big ledge. It's not like he's got like a solid footing. He's kind of having to like grip onto the wall to make sure he doesn't fall to his, if not death, then very, very serious injury. So it's hard to believe he could theoretically catch him, but at the end of the episode definitely doesn't make it look good for Chung-san, but I do think he's going to survive. Of course, it does that thing where he's like, he can't admit that he likes her, because Onjo's like, I have no one left to live for. Everyone I like is gone. And he's like, but there's people who like you, like your dad, and you have to live for that. Like, he can't say it, so you have that. It's like, really, dude? You're still doing the awkward teenage. You can't admit that you might have feelings for a girl when you're in a life and death. Like, this is the thing. Teenagers are like that, but I feel like once you're put into a situation where you think you're going to die or there's a serious risk of death, it does naturally make people a bit more open to just admitting things like that. Because it's like, well, it seems like a small thing now. Doesn't seem like such a big deal all of a sudden. But yeah, so really, like, honestly, it's impressive that a 12-episode show is peppered in episode 2 with really exciting, fun action sequences, which have the characters being proactive, which I really like. That's the big thing that stuck out towards the end of the episode for me, is that Chung-san was being more proactive, and it was almost like he was motivated because he wants to try and keep Onjo safe, because he's starting to see... he's starting to sort of recognize that he wants her to live, perhaps more so than even himself. So he's being more proactive. He's trying to think about what to do and think of solutions. Maybe they won't all work, maybe they're not all going to be good, but he's trying. So yeah, they get more proactive, which I love. Problem solving and proactivity is what I love in a survival story like this. And the fact that we have kind of this big building, a high school, which has various types of location. You know, we have kitchens, we'll have a home ec department, we have an art department, as we see. The teacher lady, she ends up in like the recording room, like where the school radio is, I assume, or you know, maybe it's like a part of the music department or something. And that's where they end up with her at the end. That's the window they're getting into at the end. Which notably, we should mention the teachers actually. The episode starts with the head teacher, the principal. He is like annoyed still that anyone dared like phone authorities and that they should try and handle this internally. And we've already seen from the end of episode 1 like a horde of zombies like break down the entire cafeteria like window. And I'm like, there's literally probably I don't know, probably over 100 deaths at this point. Like this is not an internal matter. This is like, call everyone, bring in the tanks, you know, maybe nuke the site from orbit. It might be the only way to be sure. Like that's where we're at right now. And this principle, it's making me want to see him get bitten. Honestly, like I'm looking forward to so much. Also, do you know what I appreciate? I appreciate that some of the characters, when they get bit in really like awkward places. Like the teacher who turns in the classroom about halfway through the episode, he bites one girl who doesn't make it as well, and she gets bit. Like, it's like right on the mouth. It's like half of her mouth has got a bite mark on it, and it was just like, oh, that's really awkward. Someone else gets bit right in the shoulder. Like usually it's here. Usually it's almost at the neck, right? That tends to be where the zombie bites, when they grab you from behind in movies and shows. But here, you know, there's one that's like, it runs in from the side and just bites someone on the shoulder, like right in the tip of the shoulder, and it just feels different and awkward. It's like, yeah, it would be a bit more random. You know, the zombies aren't necessarily going for where they think the good veins are or anything like that. So yeah, no, I had fun with episode 2. It's just, and I think there's a lot of other characters who just get little bits this episode. The archery team are back, and we see the main archery girl kind of save a couple of kids in the bathroom who I don't really remember these characters from the first episode, because they certainly weren't prominent enough to remember, but they do a decent job of like sort of like the kind of the tough girl and the chubby guy kind of like teaming up to kill the other girl who gets stabbed through the mouth with a pole before the arrow comes in from the archer. But so it's setting up some B teams of characters that we can also follow. Some of them might become you know more important as the show goes on. The girl who was going to commit suicide up in the roof, still being a little bit mopey. She has a line here where she says that they're still outcasts now, because they're outcasts again because now everyone's a zombie and they're not. And I'm like, that's okay. Yeah, sometimes being an outcast is alright. I'm just going to throw that out there. But they're still up in the roof. Roof seems like a fairly safe place right now. Unless the zombies start doing that World War Z thing where they start like, you know, pyramiding up the side of the building. I suspect the roof might be a good place for them to lay low for a bit. So you know, that's good stuff. We see the teacher, the science teacher, being interviewed by the police, and we get like a quick flashback of him. It turns out he actually, so this is insane. He tested his son with this, you know, what do you even call this? So he, via studying mice and cats, he discovered that some mice will actually get angry and fight back and try and attack the cats. And he wanted to give his son that ability because his son's meek and gets bullied a lot. So he was basically trying to give his son more testosterone and like a temper, make him into more of a badass. And this concoction that he came up with turned him into a goddamn zombie. Which led to the death of his wife. So even though the police officer is like kind of accusing him of just being a murderer, but when he's, you know, he's wrong about that in the traditional sense. But when he says you killed your son, didn't you? I mean, he did, and his wife. and he's responsible for every single person who dies at that school and at the hospital and wherever else we end up infecting. Like this is on him. Through his stupid attempt to, like, rather than give his son some advice, or maybe getting some martial arts classes or something to boost his confidence, maybe some therapy perhaps if it's a psychological problem. But no, he makes the T virus and thinks this'll help my son. So yeah. But so I'm cool with learning more about that. I'm not as interested in like the origin of the virus so much as I am just the survival elements and just how well they're done and have been done so far. But yeah, I had a good time with episode 2, and I will be back for episode 3. So let me know what you thought of episode 2 in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters. Mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and support all the content, you can go over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the content on its way. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?